This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
February 4th, 2023, around 5:30 in the evening, a 911 call comes in from a stretch of highway outside Mount Holly, North Carolina. The caller says he pulled over to change a flat tire. He says a man and a woman came up on him from behind. He says he was hit in the back of the head with what he thinks is a gun, stabbed with a needle, injected with something he can't identify. He tells them his hands were zip-tied behind his back, and they marched him towards some railroad tracks before finally telling him to keep walking and walking until he found a way out. Police find him a little while later out in the woods, really not that far from his truck. He's got a bruise on his forehead, marks on his shoulder. His knuckles are black with dirt. He tells them exactly who did this to him, his father-in-law. Now, if you listen to part one of this story, you already know this man's name, and you already know his father-in-law isn't just some stranger. He's the father of a woman this man is accused of murdering, using the exact same method we spent last week's episode on. So when police start searching his truck, what they find isn't exactly what you would expect from a genuine victim. This is part two of Josh and Stacy Hunsucker. So when we left off last week, it's late 2020. Josh is out on bond. His lawyer's telling the court he's broke, and the girls are with his sister instead of the Robinsons, Stacy's parents. And I want to pick up right there because the next few years are honestly just this slow, strange grind of legal maneuvering before everything blows wide open again.
Sounds so wild and interesting. I can't wait to hear what happens.
It's so chaotic.
Yeah. Already that first part, I'm like, really? Okay.
Right?
What is happening here?
I don't know that we've ever really done like two cases that connect like this.
No, I don't think we have either.
Mm-mm. All right. In July of 2020, Stacy's official cause of death is formally changed in the record from cardiac failure to homicide. It's a paperwork moment, but it matters because it's the state making it official. This is a murder case now, full stop, not just an allegation.
And what about that arson charge from the helicopter fire? Where is that at this point?
That one's actually still sitting open this whole time. Remember, investigators don't formally charge him for that. They're not ready to. They don't have everything they need until March of 2021. So for well over a year, you've got this open, unresolved arson investigation running parallel to this murder case.
So by early 2021, he's now facing both?
Right. Both murder, also insurance fraud, obtaining property by false pretense, and also arson. And here's where his defense starts making a move that's going to become a recurring theme in this case. They start arguing that he can't possibly get a fair trial.
Because of all the press coverage that's going on at this time?
Yeah, exactly that. In December of 2021, his attorney, David Teddy, formally asked the court for a change of venue, meaning move the trial somewhere outside of Gaston County because he argues that local jurors have already made up their minds.
And we've seen this happen before, right? I remember with like Eddie Gore's case.
Yes.
They did that.
Yeah, they did ask for it. And, you know, you're right. It is normal. It happens in a lot of cases. But Teddy himself actually tells the judge something interesting in that hearing. He says, in over 33 years of practicing criminal defense, this is only the fourth time he's ever requested one.
So meaning he's not doing it lightly. He really thinks it could be an issue for Josh.
Exactly. And the hearing itself is kind of fascinating because you get both sides laying out very different views of what, in quotes, media coverage even means. Teddy brings in a private investigator, a woman named Angela Brown, who testifies about what she found combing through local Facebook comments. Her words, there's a very heavy weight in the comments against the defendant. Some people apparently are calling for him to get the electric chair. Others say he should be, quote, taken out and beaten.
That is genuinely disturbing. Also, I mean, that is Facebook comments that happen on a lot of true crime stories. And I mean, with Facebook, that's not even necessarily just people in your community. That could be everybody everywhere.
Totally. Because it's not just contained to their county.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know
Exactly.
where you want to have the trial. Like, obviously, there's more coverage in your county.
Yeah.
But yeah, the state says basically what you said, where it happens in a lot of cases. The special prosecutor, Jordan Green, pushes back hard on the idea in court. His exact words, factual, accurate media coverage is not a basis for change of venue. So his argument is essentially people have strong opinions after reading real reporting, and that isn't the same thing as the reporting itself being biased or inflammatory.
So it's less the news poison the jury pool and more people are just reacting normally to a genuinely shocking case.
Exactly. And it's worth noting, even the judge, whose name was Carla Archie, points out that some of the comments Teddy's own investigator found were actually favorable towards Hunsucker. People saying he's innocent until proven guilty. So it's not universally one-sided.
So does the judge rule on it right then? Did they get the venue change?
She doesn't rule immediately. She reserves her decision. But there's this one small detail from the same hearing that I think says a lot, almost as an aside. The judge modifies Josh's curfew that day. Remember, he posted bond, so he's been out this whole time. He had been under a GPS monitor with a set curfew, and Archie extends it by an hour specifically so he can attend his daughter's activities: sports, band, cheerleading.
Nice. So he's on bond for murdering his wife, but gets some exceptions so he can go to activities, which I mean is good for the kids, but it's hard to feel like that. I don't know. It's really fair.
Right. It's not like Stacy is getting to go to those things. But on the flip side, this is taking years to get to trial, and it is
Yeah.
innocent until proven guilty. I don't know. It's so tough, right?
It is. It is tough. And it's nice for the girls to have a parent there. I mean, he is still their dad, but I don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah.
I just don't know how I feel about him being on bond and out just living his life. I don't know.
I know.
Kinda
It is
hard.
really tough. And they are still so young at this point. Losing both parents all at once would be so horrific for them.
Yeah.
But if it's his fault,
Well, they're probably living under the influence that it's not his
Oh.
fault.
absolutely.
And so it would be so much harder for them to have him not be allowed to do these things because probably in their minds, he's innocent, you know?
Yes, exactly. Him being able to be out and go to those things really is this detail that is hard to sit with. Life just continues. I mean, he's coaching from the sidelines or at least sitting in the stands while all of this is just unresolved in the background, moving along, but oh so slow.
So slow. And now it's what, 2021?
Mhm.
So it's been 3 years since
Yeah.
Stacy died at this point.
Yeah, over 3 years at this point. That hearing happens in December of 2021, and about a month later, in January of 2022, a different judge, Jesse Caldwell, issues a gag order in the case, which means attorneys, investigators, potential witnesses, they're all barred from discussing the case publicly.
Is there something that triggered that to specifically happen at this point?
Nothing in the record gives like that specific trigger, and it may just be a standard practice once a case has drawn this much attention and is still heading towards an eventual trial. But practically, it means the public reporting on this case goes really quiet for a while after that, which notably is going to make what happens next even more of a shock when it breaks.
All right. So we're now into 2022. Quiet, gag orders in place. Josh is out on bail, on bond. Kids are with his sisters. Case is sitting there unresolved. What about the civil trial from Susie that she filed? Is that still going on too at this time?
That is still going on and moving along equally slow, but he can't access any of the money. I do
So
believe
got
he's still
3 open cases right now against him.
3.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
We get to the evening of February 4th, 2023, and that's when everything changes.
Is that 911 call?
That is the 911 call from the beginning of this episode. Let's walk through everything that actually happened that night. So, the clippings I found on this are honestly some of the best sourcing in this entire case, and we will link to all of those on our blog. Around 5:30 p.m., February 4th, is when Josh calls 911. He tells them he'd been changing a flat tire on Mountain Island Highway, and that's when someone hit him in the back of the head.
And then what does he say happened after that?
Well, according to the detective's affidavit, he says he fell down, and then someone stabbed him with that needle and injected him with something, he doesn't know what. After that, he says that's when they stood him up and zip-tied his hands behind his back and then walked him to those railroad tracks. And at some point, he says they told him to keep walking, so he did. Eventually, he found an opening where he could hear cars. He got his watch out of his pocket, and that's what he used to call 911, which sounds tough because weren't your hands zip-tied behind your back?
Yeah, I was just trying to think how I would get my watch out of my pocket in that situation and why it's not on my wrist.
Yeah. Why isn't your watch on your wrist? The only reason mine wouldn't be is because it's on a charger. Why is it in your pocket?
Yeah, I guess if he took it off to change the tire, but
Possibly.
I don't know. Seems odd.
I have sat and thought for a long time about how you could get that out of your pocket. It would have to be in a back pocket. And then how you call 911 on it. It's so small. Does it do like emergency if you hold a button? Mine never has.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And it's locked because it's not on your wrist.
Exactly.
So you're trying to
you have to
unlock
put in
it
the passcode, which could be 6 numbers.
behind your back.
Yeah. I can barely do it when it's on my wrist. So
I know.
I don't know. Anyways, so he's able to call police and they find him out in the woods down the road from where his truck was parked. He's taken to Caromont Regional Medical Center where they document his injuries. They do find a bruise on his forehead, a mark on his left shoulder, and that's where he says the needle went in. His knuckles are covered in dirt. He's got abrasions on his back, his stomach, his legs. His jeans are covered in mud.
So on paper, kind of consistent with someone who was actually attacked, I guess.
Sure, yes. Now here's where it gets interesting. His truck, a 2017 Dodge Ram, is found jacked up on the east side of the highway with a flat tire, exactly like he described. But when police start actually processing the scene, around the truck and in the truck, the physical evidence tells a very different story.
Oh, what did they find out?
First, by the front passenger tire, there's a rubber mat with a flashlight and gloves sitting on top of it. Underneath that mat, hidden, there's a syringe.
Okay. So if someone used a syringe on him, likely they wouldn't leave it behind.
That would make sense to me. But, maybe in the heat of things, they just hid
Hit
it
it.
with his stuff. There's also a black zip tie on the ground by the passenger door, which is standing open. Then there's an orange bag nearby containing a second syringe and an orange work glove. Behind the rear passenger tire, and this is such a strange, odd detail, there's a tube of Mary Kay lipstick.
Lipstick, what does that have to do with anything?
Nobody explains it in the reporting, honestly. It's just listed among the items recovered at the scene. It's just oddly weird detail to find at what's supposed to be a violent kidnapping scene.
It's not like from his girlfriend, like she wasn't there with him and beat him up or something. I don't know.
Possibly. I don't actually know if he's dating someone at this time or not, if they were
Okay.
still dating or had broken up. I didn't find that, like how long that relationship lasted in the reporting. But
I was
that
like, I
is a
guess
good,
a Mary Kay lipstick. I mean, it could be her lipstick if it was in the car and fell out, but
right,
just
very
kind of
possible.
interesting.
So I don't know if that was supposed to tell a story that it didn't or was an accident.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Now, out in the woods where they found him, they find 3 more zip ties, an Apple Watch, presumably the one he used to call 911, and a folding pocket knife.
Interesting. So he had a knife, was trying to cut off his zip ties. I don't know.
I'm guessing maybe he was able to. Maybe it was in his pocket. I guess that would make sense for
Maybe.
how you get the watch out, but that wasn't in his version of events, right?
Yeah.
Police end up getting permission to search his actual truck, and inside they find a cell phone, a GoPro camera, a whole pack of 11-inch zip ties, 8 pairs of forensic swabs, and 11 fingerprint lifting pads.
Like the kind they used to process crime scenes?
Exactly that kind. And this is a man with medical and emergency response training, sitting on a truck full of surveillance and forensic equipment, a GoPro, presumably to document something, and materials you'd use specifically to either collect or manipulate physical evidence. And all of this on the same night he's reporting a violent assault against himself.
It's really interesting. Reads like someone who came prepared to either fake a scene or clean one up afterwards, or maybe both.
Well, that is certainly how investigators read it. And at this point, he is telling them, like we mentioned, that John Robinson is the one responsible.
Yeah, the man whose daughter he's accused of murdering, using this exact story to try and make him look like the criminal.
Yeah, right? Police investigate the claim and find no evidence to support it at all. No sign that John Robinson was anywhere near that scene. Instead, they conclude that Josh staged the entire thing himself. And so they charge him accordingly, not with being, a victim of a crime, but with false reporting and eventually witness intimidation for what prosecutors say he was doing with this whole kidnapping thing. It was an attempt to shift blame for Stacy's death onto her own parents.
Oh, interesting. Did John have an alibi where he was that night? Were they able to talk to him?
Yeah. Yep, they were. And he was nowhere near this. And I'm pretty sure he had not just an alibi, but they could look at where his phone had been, steps taken.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole point of this, best anyone can tell, was to make it look like the Robinsons were dangerous, violent people, right in the middle of them also pursuing a wrongful death case against him.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Most people don't realize how much of their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might just sell credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of that together at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/prevent. Protect yourself now at aura.com/prevent.
The Sherwin-Williams Summer Sale is here. Get 30% off select paints and stains or 35% off our newest product, Emerald Symmetry, July 17th through the 27th. Whether you're refreshing your interior or exterior, we've got the colors to bring your vision to life. And with delivery, getting everything to your door is easier than ever. Shop online to have it delivered or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details. Delivery available on qualifying orders.
That is the working theory, yes. He wants to discredit them, paint them as this real threat, maybe get sympathy for himself in the process. And for a while, this bizarre failed scheme that had plenty of evidence pointing to himself and no charges immediately following kind of sits.
For a while. I'm guessing there's more to come here.
Yeah, it's not even a while, I guess, because it's only about 20 days after this staged kidnapping when something happens that is so much worse. I had to sit with it before I could even write it out.
Jeez. Okay, tell me what happened next.
So on February 24th, 2023, 20 days later, Piper, who is Josh and Stacy's older daughter, is 10 years old at this point, and she becomes super sick.
And she's living with his sister still at this point, right?
She is.
What happened to her?
She has low blood pressure, a low heart rate, extreme exhaustion, constricted blood vessels, and something described in the court filing as transient alternation of awareness, which is basically a brief loss of normal awareness or behavior. So she's taken to Carolmont Regional Medical Center first, and her condition is serious enough that she's transferred to Levine Children's Hospital.
Was Josh with her when this happened? I know she's staying with his sister, but could he have been there with her too?
Well, get this. As best I can piece together, she was almost certainly with Josh and maybe even alone. By this point, custody with Josh's sister, yes, but Josh still has unsupervised visitation with the girls every other weekend. So no source states the exact location where this happened, but he is the one that takes her to the hospital himself.
Maybe at this point you can think either she's having the same symptoms her mom had right after she gave birth to her. Maybe it was some kind of genetic syndrome that her mother had that maybe if we had done autopsy, we could have found something out, or whatever that was going on, or the same thing that happened to her mom that took her life.
Yep. Now, Josh drives her to the first place, presumably because he was the one with her when this happened.
How long had she been sick before he took her to the hospital?
I did try to find that, and no source gives a time frame. So we don't know if it was hours of symptoms building or something more sudden or even over the course of 2 days. It's only described as her becoming gravely ill and being rushed in.
So what happens at the hospital?
Now, while Piper is being evaluated before any test results are back, before anyone medically that is employed there has a reason to suspect anything, they're also probably thinking about her mom's medical history from all the forms you probably fill out on intake. Here's the thing. She's getting sicker and sicker. And Josh randomly out of the blue with not really knowing her full list of symptoms is the one that brings it up. Josh tells the hospital staff that it looks like his daughter may have been poisoned with eye drops. He's like, this could be tetrahydrozoline poisoning. And the doctors are like, where did that come from? Why, they don't necessarily know who this man is and his background with tetrahydrozoline. Yeah. But I don't know if he was getting scared that they weren't going to find it, like he thought they would right away. So he brought it up. But
so do we know if they actually tested her, if they found the tetrahydrozoline in her system?
They did. They tested. He allegedly had put that in her drink, got her super sick, and then rushed her to the hospital.
Why though? Like, why would he do that?
Well, for a very similar reason to why he staged the kidnapping. He is desperately trying to take all of the heat off of him and put it onto Stacy's parents. The problem is that Stacy's parents don't have any custody. Like, yes, they are able to visit her, but he's trying to say that they poisoned Stacy and now they poisoned Stacy's daughter and that they're framing him for both.
So he said that he thought it was Stacy's parents who did this.
Yes.
Wow. Were there high levels in her system?
It is really high. And I couldn't really tell. For all of Stacy's, it says 30 to 40 times a normal level. And with Piper, it said like 600 something per whatever. And I only found that listed in one court doc. I'm not exactly sure on how those relate because they didn't say the number for Stacy and they didn't say how many times over the limit for Piper. But it was enough to make her so sick and probably could have killed her if she wasn't rushed to the hospital and then they didn't know what they were looking for,
So wild.
Isn't that insane?
Yes.
Prosecutors zero in on that exact moment later, arguing, and I do think this is hard to argue with, that no one in that hospital could have reached that conclusion from the clinical information available at that stage of her treatment. Her symptoms alone don't scream eye drop poisoning to a doctor who doesn't already know what to look for.
So really, the only way he'd notice suggests that is if he already knew what was in her system because he likely put it there.
Exactly. And, I'm sure that he will argue that he recognized the symptoms because his wife was poisoned with that and it was so familiar. Yeah. And that's the poison that his in-laws turn to when they want to frame him for something. Like I could see him making that argument, but honestly, I don't know why you would think anything else other than he did it. So he knows, doesn't really want to kill her, just wants her to be sick.
Yeah.
And so they do test for it and the suspicion's confirmed. She does have tetrahydrozoline in her system. There's also a second substance too, and this one's an adult antidepressant sold under the name Prestique or a couple others. Crucially, it is not approved for use in children.
So there's a second drug in her system that has no business being anywhere near a 10-year-old.
Right. So investigators go looking. They find a matching pill in the back of Josh's truck.
So not just the same chemical that killed Stacy happened to show up in Piper. There's physical evidence tying the second drug directly back to him. And he just left it in his car.
Yeah. I guess.
Wow.
I feel like same with the kidnapping. If he is the victim, he doesn't think those things will get searched. He's not worried about covering up his tracks because he's the victim. Why would they go through my truck?
Yeah.
And I think the same thing here. Now, thankfully, Piper does recover, but prosecutors lay out a theory for why this happened that is genuinely chilling in its calculation. They say that Josh poisoned his own daughter specifically to implicate Stacy's parents, like we talked about. The idea being if it looked like the grandparents had done this to Piper, it would discredit them as witnesses in Stacy's murder case. And maybe, even more disturbing, get them removed from the girls' lives entirely.
Wow. That isn't just an act of harm against his own child, which is so disturbing and heartbreaking on its own. If the theory's right, he's using his kids as a tool, a means to an end to protect himself and get rid of people trying to hold him accountable.
That is spot on. And that's the allegation that prosecutors are making. It's a difficult thing to say out loud about anyone, let alone a parent. But that is what the prosecutors allege in writing in court documents.
Does he get charged for this too?
This is where the timeline gets strange again. This happened in February of 2023, but he isn't indicted for it until August of 2024, well over a year later, a year and a half, actually.
Yeah. Why is there such a gap?
I couldn't find that. And I do think the gap is really troubling because when you don't have that, I mean, are they making changes to who has custody if she's allowed to be alone with him? I can't imagine leaving her in that dangerous situation. So I really hope that even though he wasn't indicted for that long, it did play a role in this ongoing custody battle that they've been having. But when the charges do come in August of 2024, they're substantial. He's indicted on 4 counts of felony witness intimidation, 4 counts of felony obstruction of justice, tied not just to the poisoning itself, but to this broader pattern prosecutors say that he's been engaged in for years at this point. So again, maybe should have charged him sooner.
Yeah. And really this pattern you're talking about is trying to shift the blame to Stacy's parents rather than having it be on him.
Shift the blame and really intimidate them into not testifying, to dropping the court case. They found that he had sent a package to the Robinsons demanding they drop the charges against him, that he had been driving by their home repeatedly, following them in public, parking in the lot of the church they attend during services. They found that he was filming and photographing them, making vulgar gestures at them, and all of it, prosecutors say, done roughly over 4 years. And much of it was done in front of his own daughters.
Wow. While all of this was happening for 4 years, was anything actually being done about it? Was there any bond violation, any warnings from the court?
As far as I can find, no, nothing. He's out on the same bond, same GPS monitor, so you can literally see that he's driving past their house. Exactly.
Yeah.
He gets to keep his same curfew. A year and a half after poisoning his own daughter, he still gets to be out on bond, doing what he wants, following them, filming his former in-laws. And none of it on its own ever triggers a hearing, a violation, a modification to the conditions. Absolutely nothing.
Wow. It baffles me that nothing changed after what happened to his daughter
For another year and a
for
half.
another year and a half. That's insane.
They could have been really at risk and nothing. It makes me so angry. That's why I was saying in the last one, that part of it is just infuriating that he can do that to a 10-year-old little girl and just keep carrying on as normal.
Yeah, nothing happens. And they find evidence of it in his truck and no changes. That's really terrifying, actually.
I really want to know what the rules were for him being out on bond. How did none of these things break that?
Yeah.
It's not until all of it gets bundled together, along with poisoning his own daughter, that it's packaged into one motion. Finally, all of the things that he'd been doing to the Robinsons, it took his daughter being poisoned, putting all of that together, that a judge finally does anything about any of it.
That's so sad and crazy that all of this has been happening in front of his kids to his former in-laws, and nothing happens until he does something almost unthinkable. Well, it is unthinkable to his own daughter.
Yep, exactly.
And then still a year and a half later.
Which is such a long time.
It's a long time.
I think that's one of the hardest things to sit with in this entire case. And it's not that nobody noticed. I mean, the Robinsons were living through it. It's that noticing alone wasn't enough to move anything, which I do not understand, until it escalated into a child ending up in the hospital, and then still a year and a half.
And I think the hardest part is what are these girls hearing? What is being fed to them? Because all of it, they're probably just pinning them against their grandparents this whole time. He probably told her that grandma and grandpa did this to her and all of these things. And as a child, what are you going to think? Who are you going to believe? Your dad, who's been with you, telling you all of these things for your whole life?
Exactly. I mean, they're
not going to want to go live with their grandparents.
Right. Oh,
they're going to be scared of them.
Yes, absolutely.
It's awful. Awful.
I know. I feel for them. And I feel for Stacy's parents too. What an awful thing to have to sit with on top of losing your daughter. The grief from losing her, and then now it's just year after year of abuse from this man, not getting to see the granddaughters, trying to handle the legal side of everything. Just awful.
Yeah. Do they finally write a motion asking for his bond to be revoked at this point?
They do. The Robinsons had spent 4 years being harassed by him, and every single time it wasn't enough. But finally, prosecutors write that Josh's, quote, dangerous actions will continue to escalate. And a judge agrees his bond on the murder charge, which he's been out on since Christmas Eve of 2019, so coming up on 5 years, is finally revoked. He's taken back into custody. And as far as the record shows, he's been there ever since. Now, in July of 2024, a Gaston County judge holds a formal hearing and rules that Josh had abused Piper and neglected both of his daughters.
And what about Willow through all of this? We've talked a lot about Piper, but did anything happen to Willow too?
She's in the public record a lot less than her sister, mostly because she isn't the one who was hospitalized. But in that July 2024 ruling that found that Josh had abused Piper, it also found that he'd neglected both, Willow included. She'd been living through every bit of this too. Her mother's death, father's arrest, watching what's happening with her grandparents, her sister's hospitalization, but she's never been centered in a single headline about any of it.
Yeah, she's just as much part of the story, even if really she's harder to see in it. But
She
you really
really
got to
is.
think she's right there too.
Exactly. She really is.
And even after that ruling, after court says on the record that he abused his own children, do the girls stay with his sister or go with the grandparents?
It's so infuriating, but they don't. Custody stays with Josh's sister. And, I understand that they've been living with her for 4.5 years. That's their normal, wanting to keep things normal. But man, it's got to be so tough for the Robinsons. They are not given custody even after this.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's like what we were talking about before. Maybe the girls don't want to move. It's so hard because of everything they've been told by their dad.
Right. As of the most recent reporting we have, it seems like Susie and John Robinson are still fighting in court, and they are still trying to bring their granddaughters home, but they are still, as far as I can tell, with Josh's sister.
Yeah, I think that that's really sad. They've been doing so much trying to hold him accountable,
Mm-hmm.
and they still aren't able to fully protect the girls like they wanted to.
Yeah, it's got to be such another layer on top of everything else. I definitely feel like it's one of the most devastating things in this entire case. I mean, the sheer audacity of everything Josh has allegedly done, the fire, the kidnapping, murder, poisoning, everything. But underneath all of it, there's this grandmother and grandfather who have spent over 6 years now fighting, and they still don't have those girls at home with them.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Thanks for joining our first ever support group for puppies. By show of paws, who's eaten a computer cable called a dongle?
I ate a dongle before we had Lemonade pet insurance, so to avoid a vet bill, they waited for me to poop the dongle.
You pooped a dongle?
I pooped a dongle.
You pooped a dongle?
I pooped a dongle.
So brave.
I pooped a USB stick.
Yeah, but he pooped a dongle! With Lemonade Pet Insurance, save up to 90% at the vet, so you never have to find out if your pup can poop a dongle. Get a quote at lemonade.com/pet.
So where does the case stand now?
So, actually, still being written. Let me walk you through how we get from that August 2024 arrest to where things sit today.
Okay.
After everything that happened and finally getting it in front of a judge, and Josh's bond on the original murder charge is revoked. This part surprised me a little bit. It's not that a judge forces this over his objection. According to the actual court filings, he does consent to it. His attorney says on the record that Josh wants to avoid the negative publicity that would come from a contested hearing on the state's motion to revoke his bond.
So basically, he chose to go back into custody rather than fighting it publicly.
That's what the filing says, and he has been in custody ever since. Now, this case already had one attempt at a change of venue. We talked about that back in December of 2021. The court ended up denying that one, but in April of 2026, his attorney files a renewed motion, and I did manage to find the real filing for that one.
Oh, that's exciting. What does it say exactly?
It's one of the most useful documents in this whole case because the defense's entire argument is built around laying out in exhaustive detail everything that's been publicly said about Josh over the past 6 years, which ironically makes it a pretty good summary of this whole thing for us.
So the document meant to argue nobody in this county can be impartial doubles as a recap of this case, basically.
Basically, pretty much. Here's what it lays out. Since that first venue denial in 2021, the filing says he's been arrested on additional felony and misdemeanor charges. National media coverage renewed and intensified dramatically. The case was featured in a major exclusive by People magazine. And that's the piece that we pulled from earlier with Stacy's friend and also the babysitter. There was some kind of scholarly or analytical feature that framed him within this broader national pattern of spousal poisoners in early 2026, and then a superseding indictment.
What's a superseding indictment exactly?
Essentially, prosecutors go back to a grand jury and get a new, updated indictment, sometimes to either add charges or sometimes just to formalize things after so much time has passed. In this case, it's on the same core charges. We've got first-degree murder, insurance fraud, and obtaining property by false pretense, just reissued 7 years after the original.
So are the fire, the kidnapping, the daughter poisoning, all of that separate charges?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. The filing itself gives us the answer. Prosecutors have indicated that they may want to use all of that, the fire, the stage kidnapping, poisoning his own daughter, as what's called 404B evidence in the murder trial itself.
What exactly does that mean?
Basically, it's a legal rule that normally keeps a jury from hearing about a defendant's other bad acts. So they don't convict someone just because he seems like a generally terrible person. But there are exceptions, and one of them is when those other acts show a pattern or intent or a way of operating that's directly relevant to the crime being tried. So the state's argument would essentially be looking at everything else this man has done since Stacy died, setting a fire, staging an assault, poisoning his own child, and ask yourself whether that's the behavior of an innocent man wrongly accused or evidence of exactly what kind of person you're dealing with.
Wow. So really all of this episode essentially could end up sitting right in front of the jury during the actual murder trial.
That is very possibly what will happen. The filing notes that prosecutors have not ruled out joining everything into one trial altogether.
Wow. I can't believe it's been 7 years since the original indictment now.
Me too. It moves so slow.
Yeah.
That new indictment triggers a fresh arraignment, which is a court hearing where charges are formally read and a plea entered. This happened on April 6th of this year, and it's the same day this renewed venue motion is filed.
So what's actually in the argument? What is he pointing to?
His lawyers list out basically every outlet that's ever covered this case. Local Charlotte TV stations, the Gaston Gazette, the Charlotte Observer, and the national ones like CBS's 48 Hours, segments on ABC News, NBC News, the Washington Post, Fox News, Court TV, People, HuffPost, BuzzFeed, and the lawyers get specific about the reach of it all. For example, the 48-hour episode alone was titled The Eye Drop Homicide, and it reportedly reached somewhere between 5 and 8 million viewers nationally, and then it re-aired on all of their other streaming places like Investigation Discovery, OWN, TLC. They also bring up the People magazine piece. They say approximately 35 million print readers, plus tens of millions more online.
Wow. Is there anyone out there without an opinion on this case? Because it sounds like everyone has likely heard of it.
Well,
I guess I hadn't heard of it. Have to come out here.
Yeah, come to Arizona and we'll be on the jury.
Yeah. Well, not anymore. We can't.
No, we're not impartial now.
Is there anyone with an opinion on all of this coverage of this case? I mean, I drop homicide about this case and he's not even like proven guilty.
Right. So I'm sure they use the word allegedly a lot.
A lot.
Now, there is someone who is not involved in the case at all, a local attorney named Brent Ratchford, who'd previously won a change of venue himself in a different Gaston County murder case, was quoted publicly saying he's never seen a case in Gaston County get more attention, and that failing to seek a change of venue in this case would be, in his words, basically legal malpractice.
Pretty striking thing for an outside lawyer to say publicly, really.
For sure. And for what it's worth, he predicted this renewed motion back in 2023, so 3 years before it was actually filed.
Yeah. I mean, he's predicting this so far back because there's such an enormous audience watching this Gaston County murder case, really.
Yeah. And his argument isn't just a lot of people heard about this, it's that the coverage itself has, he says, been inflammatory. He makes the point that it's gone beyond just reporting facts into territory that basically presumes the guilt, which he hasn't been tried yet, innocent until proven guilty. And he also points specifically to something that I think is worth knowing about. At least 2 public Facebook video posts have given Josh the nickname the eye drop killer.
Yeah, like I said with the, 48-hour video.
Mm-hmm. All before the trials happened.
Yeah, pretty bad label to have attached to you before the trials.
I can't figure out why it's taken so long.
Yeah, maybe if they could get through things faster,
right?
This blow up of that, we wouldn't have this issue.
Exactly.
Honestly,
that's what I was.
If this had happened a year after, even too. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the ins and outs of all of that, but it feels like if things could get moving faster, you wouldn't have all these things going on covering this case that hasn't hit a trial yet.
Yes, spot on. Back in that first venue hearing in 2021, a local reporter live tweeted the proceedings, and that tweet captured Facebook comments from community members. And that is how they had the comments from the community members that we had referenced earlier, like the electric chair or things like that. People calling for violence, essentially.
Yeah, years before the trial even.
Right, documented, and now in that actual court filing as evidence of community prejudice. And to be fair to his argument, genuinely extrajudicial calls for violence against a defendant, maybe it's understandable the anger that some people might feel, but it's a real legal problem for the possibility of a fair trial. And that's not me taking his side. It's just how the law actually treats this kind of thing.
So what is he actually asking the court to do?
2 different options, really. Either move the entire trial outside of the Charlotte Gastonia media market, which is a specific defined broadcast region. Or if the judge won't do that, bring in a jury from somewhere outside that same region instead. And his argument is that pulling jurors from anywhere still inside that market wouldn't actually solve anything because everyone in it has been exposed to the same saturation of coverage.
It's really interesting because, like we said, if there's millions and millions of people who have heard this story, it's going to be really hard to find people who haven't.
Absolutely. And I do think seeing one piece on the internet, on people.com, for example, and reading one thing, probably, especially if it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you could still be an impartial juror. But the amount of coverage in that media market, because it's happening right there, and everything that comes up, and, they can interview friends, they can interview family, the babysitter, whatever, and that's just local. We're not getting that here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you bring in people from outside without completely disrupting their life and very possibly pissing them off just a little bit.
Yeah.
I would think it makes more sense to take the trial outside, but that's just me.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, people, even here, you get a local jury summons and it's like, oh, how am I going to do this? If I'm having to work and all of the things, it's hard. I can't imagine being called and being like, oh, now you have to go to another state to go
and
to
stay,
this.
right? I'm assuming like a couple counties over. I don't know how.
I mean, how far a reach do you have to have? I don't know.
Right. I don't even know how you determine that. And maybe you bring in 100 jurors and exclude them all and try again.
Maybe.
I don't know.
So where does this leave the timeline for the actual trial now?
Well, we are bringing you this story before it goes to trial. As of this renewed motion, the trial is scheduled to begin as a jury trial on September 8th, 2026. So less than 2 months.
So really coming up here. I guess we'll find out how they do this, I guess.
Agreed. Oh, I remember the other thing I was going to say. With everything they want to bring into this trial, I doubt it is a short one. I could see this being quite a long trial. Now, depending on exactly when you're hearing this episode, whether it's when we drop it or a year from now, but if it's when we drop it, the trial won't have happened yet, or maybe you're listening a month behind and it's happening now. But with a verdict, we don't know yet as we're recording this. It's a little bit of an open-ended question.
Yeah, genuinely, we don't know how this ends. It's all of this still alleged at this point.
Allegedly accused, innocent until proven guilty. So everything that we've talked about, while it is documented in affidavits, court reports, reporting on the case, all of it is still legally just that, accusations. He has pleaded not guilty to every charge against him, and none of it has been resolved or proven in a courtroom yet.
What do we want listeners to actually do with this?
Well, keep an eye out on it. September 8th is not that far. It's sitting on a real court calendar, and that trial will determine what exactly happened to Stacy and to her daughter. And if you want to know how this ends, that's the date to watch for. I do believe that we'll come back to this case ourselves once there's an actual resolution. But for now, this is where the story stands.
Before we go, is there anything else you want people to leave with for this story?
I have 2 more things, actually. First, a small coda. Back in June of 2025, so Josh was sitting in jail at that point without bond, Capital One sued him for $26,734 in unpaid credit card debt.
Wow. I mean, with all of his assets frozen, that's probably what he used all of that time since they filed that case, freezing everything he had. He probably just used credit cards thinking, oh, well, I'm going to do.
Right. I guess I don't have a choice. And, he was fired from his job in 2019. And I didn't find if he was able to get another one while he's out on bond. But I can't imagine that's very easy.
Can't imagine that's easy. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
And everything's frozen. What else are you going to do? Use your credit cards.
Exactly. So, money seemed like it would matter so much. And then at this point, he's being sued for credit card debt. The second thing, this isn't just a 2-case story. Even setting aside what we already know about Lana's case from the beginning, a forensic toxicologist testified at a different unrelated poisoning trial that, quote, it's a pretty recent phenomenon to see tetrahydrozoline being used other than an eye drop. And according to reporting we found, at least 4 people have been convicted of killing someone that exact same way, someone close to them, just in the past 5 years.
That's really crazy. It's not just a strange one-off or even just a strange two-off. This is really becoming its own quiet category of true crime.
I mean, I hope, because as we were doing Lana's case, I had to go double check that when I mentioned wedding crashers and them putting Visine in the drink, that really was Visine and not something else. I was like, is my memory right? Haven't seen this in a long time. And I was right. It is Visine that they show. And the side effects that they say it's going to cause are flat out untrue. Plus, it's extremely dangerous and could kill you. And when you search for that, it brings up all of the warnings. That's on my Google search now, but it brings up all of the warnings. And that's not the only show it's in. So my hope with this is that for a teenager, possibly, who sees that movie on or one of the other shows, is like, oh, this would be funny to do to my friend or my whatever. It's not funny. And it doesn't have the consequences that they explain in that show. And I don't know why they had to use Visine for that. I really don't.
Yeah, that's so dangerous, I think.
Yeah.
So dangerous. And like you said, people see this happening in a show. They think it's funny. They think it's only going to do this. So they try it. I mean, it's the same thing like we talked about separately.
Mm-hmm.
People eating Tide Pods. Crazy things that you think might have one effect. And it can really be dangerous.
Exactly.
And kill somebody.
Yeah. Let's not put that in movies when it could literally be deadly. I don't know. And make it seem like it's funny.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, this really is its own quiet category of true crime all of a sudden. And like you said, and I don't know what to make of that fully, but this case, crazy.
Yeah, so crazy.
At the end of it, though, we will keep an eye out on the trial. I hope that Stacy gets some kind of justice, whatever that looks like, whenever this resolves. So I have been watching one case for Vanished Voices that was supposed to be like October of 2025, and then February of 26, and then May of 26. Now it's pushed out to September of this year. So there is a chance that happens. And that one's also been sitting for over 7 years. So
wow.
Sometimes it moves oh so slow. But
yeah.
Anyways, thanks for joining us for this sort of 3-parter, but 2-parter on Stacy Hunsucker. If you want to read more about this case or see the resources that we used to write it, you can find those on our blog, crimeclueless.com, which is also our website if you want to learn anything else about us or see the other cases that we've covered. We would love to connect with you on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. We're at Crime Clueless on all of them. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd be so grateful if you would take a moment to give us a rating. It means the world to us. Or share our podcast. You can find Crime Clueless on all streaming platforms. And with that, as always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.